All right, Panther Lair, I'm coming back to you guys with another video. This time we're going to talk about Pitt's use of the Spain pick and roll in their victory over the Mississippi State Bulldogs this past Tuesday in the first four as part of the NCAA tournament. Now, you've heard me talk about Spain pick and roll for the last several years. It's also referred to as stack pick and roll, Euro pick and roll, but the most popular name for it is certainly Spain pick and roll. But what's important is not that you're seeing it or I'm seeing it necessarily, as much as what Pitt and other teams that use it, what they are trying to accomplish by doing so. So let's get into this a little bit here. I got 3 clips for you guys. So this is a very common way for Pitt to get into their Spain pick and roll, especially it involves Greg Elliott, because Elliott will usually set a ram screen or the screen-to-screener action here on the 5-man's defender. Now, sometimes it's Fede Federico. Here we have, obviously, Guillermo Diaz-Graham due to Federico's injury. So Elliott is going to set this screen on Tulu Smith, and then Guillermo is going to sprint here to set a ball screen for Nike Sabandi. Now, one of the advantages of doing this is it's going to put Smith in a trailing position to get back to the ball screen action, and that's going to open a lot of room for the ball handler, and it creates an advantage for the offense. So that's one of the reasons that you use a ram screen or the screen-to-screener action. Now, the Spain pick and roll in and of itself is going to involve the ball screen here by Guillermo, and as Nike turns the corner, Elliott is going to set a back screen on Tulu Smith. And then that's going to free Guillermo after he sets this ball screen to then roll to the basket. Now that puts Elliott's defender in a position where he now needs to contain the drive by Nike or sink back and try to protect the rim against a rolling Guillermo. So either way, this puts a ton of rim pressure on the defense, and it's kind of a pick your poison type of situation. That's pretty much what Pitt is trying to accomplish here and other teams when they use Spain pick and roll. So let's play this out a little bit. Here comes the ball screen. Now, one of the things, we're going to talk about this later, is drop coverage. That's something that Mississippi State did a lot of. So what will happen a lot of times is in these clips, you'll see Tulu Smith establishes some time of drop point, and the defender on the ball handler is going to try to fight over the screen, right? So this defender's responsibility is to contest a shot from behind, and Smith is going to kind of contain this drive. And they pretty much do this a lot of times in their ball coverages in this game. So that's the coverage they still choose to do on the top ball screen itself. But as this action unfolds, and even though Elliott's not really in a position to set the back screen here on Smith, Guillermo kind of just plows into Elliott's defender. Part of this is probably intentional. I think the key look here is definitely the Elliott 3. It's not going to be this lob to Guillermo most likely unless it came absolutely open. So by running kind of this pin down now, it's freeing Elliott to hit an open 3 and get the foul. And that's very common for Pitt throughout this season. So now we're going to see this being run for Burton. Now, one of the ways that you can attack drop coverage is by rejecting the screen. So Burton goes a little bit sooner than the screen is set, but by rejecting it, you kind of put this guy in drop coverage out of position a little bit. So Burton does a really good job of rejecting screens. He's done that all year. Here you're going to see Cummings tries to set the back screen, but realize that Smith just kind of is lost in no man's land. I think that the threat of Guillermo hitting another 3 here probably bothered him a little bit. So he just kind of tries to stick to Guillermo, tries to have his eyes on Burton. It's pretty clear that he's not super used to having to defend this action like consistently. And so Cummings, who was going to set this back screen, chooses not to, and he just kind of flares out here. Guillermo's a little late on the dive. So I think Cummings' defender peels off here to do the contain. Again, that's exactly what Pitt's trying to look for, but now you're sending 2 to the ball. Burton's very patient here. Cummings does a good job with this ball fake, then hits a nice 3. He was hot pretty much the whole night. So this is the Hinson 3 at the end of the game. And I just don't think that Pitt does a great job here with all of the screening action. I think they're really focused on what happens afterwards. So Mississippi State's going to do a pretty good job of just kind of like staying at home. Cummings' defender is going to fight over. No one really has to be taxed here too much. This defender, so everyone's pretty much able to stay with their initial assignments on this, and Hinson just kind of hits this crazy shot. But let's talk a little bit quickly about what Mississippi State could have done to defend this and what other teams usually do to defend this, or at least better teams are at higher levels, just because, again, trying to give you the purpose of why teams use Spain pick and roll. So let's talk about how teams can possibly take this away. So if we look at this alignment here, as this was probably the best job that Mississippi State did, albeit it's a little bit is because of the poor screening by the Panthers, is what is very popular to do is for this big to try to just get around here and get all the way back in front of the charge circle. His assignment's going to be to try to protect the rim anyway, so he might as well just be there to begin with. And what will happen here amongst the guards is that these two players would probably switch. So as Cummings turns the corner, Hinson's defender would release to defend him, and as Hinson flares out into this space, Cummings' defender is just going to pick him up, and then this defender is just going to meet everything at the rim. So if Guillermo rolls down here, it will just be met at the rim anyways, and Hinson won't be as available to hit an open three. Granted, he'd probably just take that anyways and probably make it, but that's exactly how some teams would defend it. That's a pretty popular way at a higher level. The NBA teams, you'll see that's pretty much the most popular way to defend this. You also could switch everything here, although that requires a lot of personnel, a lot of good communication. And what ends up happening, the only disadvantage here is if you switch everything, then Guillermo takes Cummings' defender in deep. Although Mississippi State's a pretty good defensive team, so maybe they scram switch this. But at the same time, it's just one of the things that they could have done against this. But Pitt was very effective using Spain pick and roll. I think they've been using it all season, so they're confident in it. And that's one of the reasons that they had so much success on Tuesday. And I expect them to go back to this against the Iowa State Cyclones on Friday.